not very happy with courts in general, not just the Supreme Court.
Why not?
The courts, over time, have always responded to the dominant class in society. In the early part of this century and the latter part of the last century, the dominant class was the business class. And the courts were writing conservative and free market principles into the Constitution that are not there. I mean, it was a conservative activist courts. Since World War II, the dominant class in this country has become the intellectual class. The people I was talking about before, university professors, journalists, Hollywood, foundation staffs, so on and so forth. And the Supreme Court, all the courts are responding to that class. In fact, they come out of that class and they respond to it. It's really more important to many judges what the law schools say about them and what the Washington Post and the New York Times say about them than anything else. And they'll begin to move in that direction, which is a leftward direction.
This is what I spent my morning doing. Going back and reading Robert Bork, The Tempting of America, Slouching Toward Gomorrah, and the interviews he did surrounding the release of those two books. And that was an interview he did December 2nd, 1996 on C-SPAN, book notes on C-SPAN. And he talked about what happens when courts become essentially political vehicles. They're not courts in the traditional understanding of what jurists and what judges are supposed to do. They merely are responding to public pressure, much like mini legislatures.
That's the reason I think we have to think of some democratic check on the courts. By the way, when I spoke of the incentives judges face, if you constantly get praise for one kind of action and criticism for another kind of action, you'll keep moving in the direction where the praise comes from, even without realizing it.
Number one, it reminds me of how much I miss Judge Bork. Number two, it reminds me of what a crime it was that he, in 1987, did not get confirmed to be an associate justice at the Supreme Court. Number three, it reminds me again of how far ahead of his time he was. And I'm going to link this up. Drew, remind me, I've got to send it. You actually have the link, but let's put that interview on our Facebook page. It's already there. It's fascinating. Fascinating to go back and watch his warnings about the court system in our country. He believed, and he had a debate with other conservative judicial thinkers and writers about the need to circumscribe the court's jurisdiction. He actually believed the court wasn't controllable beyond just all you have is the impeachment power against judges. And that's going to be rarely exercised. So that's the only check you really have. Once someone is appointed to the federal courts, it's life tenure. So once the courts start becoming so political that they're indistinguishable from congressional bodies, what do? So his view was, you need a democratic check on these courts, meaning what? Congress passes legislation to limit the jurisdiction of the federal courts. And can it be done? You bet it can be done. And he wrote about this and talked about this throughout the latter part of his legal career, long after 87 and that debacle. But it was fascinating. I kept thinking I was going to get into the studio early, maybe go to the gym downstairs, and I just kept watching this. And I interviewed him so many times on the show early on. He died, a few years back now, 4 or 5 years ago. But he had one of those razor sharp wits. He did not suffer fools well. He was asked in that interview, and we'll play different parts of it later, but he was asked in that interview about what he wrote in his book about the virtue of boredom. That's a funny thing to hear, like the virtue. Why is boredom a virtue? And he said, people have now come to this point where they think they always need to be entertained. And Brian Lamb says, well, are you ever bored? He says, only when I'm listening to someone speak who knows little. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And then he said, but what with boredom today, instead of reading, traditionally when people didn't get bored, they had a lot of work to do, or they read and they expanded their thinking and became more learned. The boredom is something for the effete classes. You know, boredom. What do you mean boredom? So today with boredom, people cure their boredom through a lot of different activities, much of which are negative. They have a very deleterious effect on the culture. Drugs, entertainment, which becomes increasingly debased as we see on television and movies, a variety of other social pathologies. So you assuage your boredom through a lot of negative habits. And how the decline of reading in the United States and throughout Western culture has led to a decline in thinking about the great issues of our day and understanding why all cultures are not equal. We'll talk about that later on. But I know you're all thinking, well, Laura, you're not going to talk about the Ninth Circuit decision? What did I tell you was going to happen at the Ninth Circuit? What did I tell you? They would lose at the Ninth Circuit because the judges on the Ninth Circuit will act as legislators, sitting in judgment, legislative judgment over what President Trump did. That is exactly what they did. They came up with absurd theories of standing, which standing refers to whether or not an individual or a corporation, or in this case a state, has the legal right to bring a case. How does Washington State and Minnesota have standing to allege constitutional violations for individuals? How does a state say that there is irreparable harm done because someone was inconvenienced because they couldn't get into the country, I guess, on a green card or as a refugee? That's a wild thing that a state can say that is, number one, irreparable injury. It's not irreparable, it's temporary. Irreparable injury, and that they have the standing to raise that issue as a state body for students, let's say at a university who want to get back in, they're on a student visa or something. It's ludicrous. So I thought a lot about two of my old friends who are no longer with us, Justice Scalia and Robert Bork, last night. I kept thinking I would give anything to have Bork on the show today, because he would cut through this with a razor-sharp wit and an intellect of what happened to the United States judicial system, where judges become super legislators. You know what happens? And he said this very clearly in this interview. We have less freedom. Our freedom is diminished when unelected judges can act as if they're campaigning every 2 years. Our freedom is diminished as a representative democracy because this law, 8 U.S.C. 1182F, could not be any more clear. That's what Donald Trump said yesterday or the day before when he spoke, and he read the entire statute, which was unnecessary, but he did it anyway. He's not a lawyer, but he knows. I mean, that's a very clear statute. He has every right to do what he did. Now, you can argue about the rollout, and I have. You can talk about the messaging, and I have. But just the law on its face now, we're to believe, doesn't mean what it says. The four corners of the statute, they don't mean anything. Because an unelected judge in Seattle, in the federal court in Seattle, didn't like the outcome. So we have outcome-based judging. What do I mean by that? The judge in Seattle, Judge Robart, who, by the way, is a Patty Murray judge. He wasn't a George W. Bush judge. Patty Murray urged George W. Bush to put this district court judge on the, in the Seattle district court system. And it was like a trade-off. They do this a lot on the lower courts. So they do this a lot. When they have a logjam and another confirmation, they'll say, okay, you give me this, I'll give it. This is what happens. But this is a Patty Murray judge who decided he didn't like the headlines that he was seeing. He didn't like the news coverage. Now judges are susceptible, as Judge Bork said in that soundbite, that judges are more concerned with the way the Washington Post and the intellectual set at the universities think about them than they are concerned with the four corners of a statute or what the original intention of our framers were.
To many judges, what the law schools say about them and what the Washington Post and the New York Times say about them than anything else. And they'll begin to move in that direction, which is a leftward direction.
And that's exactly what's happened. 855-40-LAURA. We know right now that our freedom, our belief in the representative democracy, it's undermined in a lot of ways. It's undermined when we feel like congressmen and legislators drag their feet on issues that have to be tackled. For a variety of reasons, they drag their feet. They say they're going to do one thing, and then they get into office and they don't do it. There's someone like Donald Trump who said, I'm going to come in day one, I'm going to repeal and replace Obamacare, and then we don't have a Republican legislature, even though they have the dominant votes in the House and the Senate. 8 years later, they still don't have agreement, Senate and House, on a replacement bill. 8 years later, and they still can't agree on what the replacement of Obamacare should look like or the messaging. Now, I gotta say, I find that to be difficult to even say, let alone believe. It's very frustrating. Got frustration directed toward the legislative branch. We have a lot of frustration directed at the judicial branch because judges are engaging in an outcome-based consideration of cases. They figure out a way to judge it to get to the outcome that the dominant culture wants. We saw this in the gay marriage cases. We saw this in the way the Obamacare case was decided by Justice Roberts. We see this in a lot of cases coming out of the Ninth Circuit, which is why, along with the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, it is one of the most reversed appellate court jurisdictions in the United States of America. The outcome is more important than what the law says. Think about that. We didn't vote for Judge Robart, and yet he was able to determine the refugee and visa policy for the entire country. He's able just with a stroke of a pen. Oh, no, that's sorry. That executive order doesn't hold. When the law is clear. 855-40-LAURA. We're going to get into this, but I was thinking a lot about Judge Bork. Oh, man. And, of course, Justice Scalia. How much I miss both of them. We'll take a break. Your reaction to this outrageous Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal ruling. We're also going to talk to Pat Buchanan. He's coming up. He had a terrific piece about where we are right now with this major challenges to executive authority and with a lot of concern about the foot dragging on Capitol Hill. They'll be held to pay. They'll be held to pay. This Congress doesn't do the things that Trump has a Republican mandate to do. At the very least, a Republican mandate. Kellyanne Conway on Fox and Friends yesterday was pushing Ivanka Trump's clothing line, and people are going crazy over that, and that's created another side issue. Your reaction to that? Whether Trump should engage in some type of ethical or disciplinary action against her? They're going to push him to do that, but it looks like he's going to stand firm with Kellyanne. Is that the right way to go? Or is he setting himself up for problems? I think the Democrats are putting a lot of ideas in a basket of impeachment, and I see that. I hear it. It's online. It's being said on cable news this morning. They better be very careful how they handle these types of issues. And we love Kellyanne, but they got to figure this out real quick. 855-40-LAURA. We'll take a break. A lot more to get to on your healthy, discerning, and missing Judge Bork and Scalia radio addiction.
Okay, you want to keep your favorite podcasts like this one free to download, right? Well, then all you have to do is complete a short, anonymous survey, which takes less than 5 minutes. Just go to podcastone.com/mysurvey to answer the questions. You can also get there by clicking the banner at podcastone.com. If you've done this in the past, we'd like to thank you, but we do need you to do it again because we want to make sure we're giving you what you want. That's podcastone.com/mysurvey or click the banner at podcastone.com.
This is a complete victory for the state of Washington. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, in a unanimous decision, effectively granted everything we sought. We are a nation of laws.
Why did you lie to me? Can't be trusted, good for nothing type of brother. Everything you
Except
claim
for
to be.
8 U.S.C. 1182F, nation laws. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Well. We got a lot of people on the line. We'll get to it. We're going to talk to Buchanan coming up. Alan Dershowitz, no conservative. He was pretty spot on in what the Ninth Circuit did here.
This is not a solid decision. This is a decision that looks like it's based more on policy than on constitutionality. There are many, many flaws, and if I were Trump's lawyer, I would say, look, here's your situation. You're going to lose the stay application to the Supreme Court. This stay is going to stay in effect now for many, many weeks and months. You may ultimately win in the Supreme Court, but you've said that the national security of the United States depends on this order being implemented now. So you have only one option. You have to withdraw the order. You have to go back to the drawing board. You have to come up with a new order that will immediately be applicable and won't be able to get a stay from any judge. Otherwise, you won't be protecting the security of the United States.
Well, his view is that the court got it wrong, but just rescind the order. We don't need to get to that issue yet. We're just focusing on the order itself. Jonathan Turley on the issue of the Ninth Circuit's reasoning. By the way, the Ninth Circuit botched the entire understanding of standing.
This is a rather curious opinion, and in the art world, it'd be called impressionistic. It's
Well done. Yeah.
the court takes these very broad views of not just the law but the facts. I mean, the administration has said that one of the reasons these countries are on the list is that they don't have reliable ways of confirming information for entry, not simply that they produced actual terrorists, but that their records, their process, their procedures are not trusted.
Yeah, and it's not within the purview of the judiciary to second guess that. They're not getting the presidential daily briefs. They don't understand, or should they know, about the critical national security issues and the considerations that enter into this decision making, regardless of what you think of the merits of the order. It's ridiculous. Very quickly, James in Florida. I got about 15 seconds. James.
The comment in the writing, the court said, the Ninth Circuit Court said that they listened to public opinion. They didn't say it quite that way. They said as soon as the order was issued, people rose up against it. That was very inappropriate for the Ninth Circuit to say.
Very telling. Exactly right. Excellent point. And right in line with what Judge Bork warned about with the federal judiciary. Coming up, Pat Buchanan. Don't go away.
Taste of your love, sweet and wild.
Valentine's Day is next week. If you've still not done anything about that, well, don't wait until the last minute. End up giving just an ordinary expected gift. A gift from Sherry's Berries will show her that you planned ahead. You find the perfect gift, and she's going to love them. I promise you. All my friends and family who've had the great pleasure of getting Sherry's Berries love them. And the berries are dipped in white milk and dark chocolatey goodness. You're going to love it. $19.99. That's where they started Sherry's Berries plus shipping, or you can double the berries for just $10 more. And you need my code to take advantage of this deal, the code Laura. So just go to berries.com. That's BERRIES.com. Use my code Laura. Just hit that little microphone in the top right-hand corner. Type in Laura, and then you'll get access to that special deal. So $19.99. You can do that plus shipping, or you can just, for $10 more, you can double the berries. It's awesome. Again, berries.com. Click that microphone. Enter Laura for Valentine's Day.
This is a complete victory for the state of Washington. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, in a unanimous decision, effectively granted everything we sought. We are a nation of laws. And as I have said, as we have said, from day one, that those laws apply to everybody in our country, and that includes the President of the United States.
It's a political decision, and we're going to see them in court, and I look forward to doing it.
So you believe the judges made a
We
political
have
decision?
a situation where the security of our country is at stake, and it's a very, very serious situation. So we look forward, as I just said, to seeing them in court.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. No big surprise, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals does what the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals does. It legislates. They're legislators. This is not the way the framers conceived of our three branches of government, where legislators are trumped by unelected judges, and where legislators are trumped by judges, or presidents are trumped by judges who make national security decisions, which essentially is what's happening here. Joining us now, Pat Buchanan, one of my absolute favorites, former advisor to, 17 presidents. I don't know how many, in the end. Hey, Pat, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Not surprised by this court ruling. I went back, Pat, and I was listening to old interviews that Judge Bork did on his book Slouching Toward Gomorrah, and his discussion back in 1996 of why it was incumbent upon the legislative branch to actually circumscribe the jurisdiction of the federal courts.
Well, I didn't hear your question.
Oh, okay.
But there's no doubt about it. If you're talking about what's called the Stripper Amendment, the Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution gives Congress and the President the power to restrict the jurisdiction of the federal courts. And what we have here, basically, is an assertion by the 11th Circuit and by that one judge out in Washington that the national security decisions on borders of the President of the United States advancing the national security of the United States are subject to veto by single federal district judges. Now, this is an assertion of power over presidential policy that cannot be allowed to stand.
What would you recommend, in understanding the dynamic as it exists today, what would you recommend that the president's team do here?
That they should rewrite the order. I really think they ought to go up to the Supreme Court on this. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, let's find out if the Supreme Court is going to assert superior authority over the national security decisions of the White House and the President of the United States by federal courts, so that, in other words, they become the dominant power. I mean, who was it, Lincoln, whoever said the one who decides what the law says, he's the lawgiver.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that this is something that Judge Bork understood, 30, 40 years ago about what was happening to the federal courts. They were becoming like the law faculties of universities and colleges, because they came out of those law faculties, and they were seeking the approval and the imprimatur, not of what our framers understood the meaning of the Constitution to be, but they were seeking the approval of the editorial boards of major U.S. newspapers.
The problem really lies, though. The problem really lies with the executive branch and especially with the congressional branch, that will not stand up to the U.S. Supreme Court, that will not stand up to court decisions, won't restrict their jurisdiction. Let me tell you a story. It's in my upcoming book. I was in a meeting with Nixon and Connally back in, I think it was November of 1971, where the Supreme Court heard a case on whether Nixon could set off a 5-megaton explosion in Chitka to test his SDI. And the court ruled that he could. But Nixon told Connally that if the court had ruled the other way, he would have set the bomb off. Now, in other words, at some point, an executive has got to defy the judges on these matters. As I've got in my column this morning, Jefferson not only refused to enforce the Alien and Sedition Acts, his party impeached Samuel Chase, who had conducted one of the trials. These people acted. I mean, Lincoln was about to arrest the Chief Justice of the United States, who said he didn't have the power to suspend habeas corpus. So you're going to have strong presidents or frankly, you cannot rely upon the Congress. It is a cowardly institution. It simply will not protect its own rights. It surrenders its control over the currency. I mean, the president, its power to declare war has been surrendered to the president. It really doesn't want responsibility.
No, which is why we still don't have a replacement for Obamacare. I mean, they don't want that on their shoulders.
Sure, they don't want to make a decision where they go home and half of the folks are saying we're going to throw you out.
So
this is what they're interested in, self-preservation. I guess, and the bottom line, as are we all.
Yeah, getting reelected. Well, again, it goes back to the desire to be loved and to retain power, not the desire to do what is right. And a good friend of mine, who's a very prominent attorney in Washington, really brilliant. When this Seattle District Court stay was put in place and the ruling was against Trump, he said to me, Trump should say, make us. He should order Homeland Security to continue the ban in place. And everyone's like, that would be a constitutional crisis. We already have a constitutional crisis.
That's what you want. I don't say it's not a constitutional right. Your friend is exactly right. You have to, at some point, defy them. Let me give you one other example. When Mitt Romney, the Massachusetts Supreme Court, the first one, voted 4-3, declared gay marriages to be legitimate marriages and ordered the state to hand out marriage licenses. I urged Governor Romney, just say, I've read the Constitution again. It's not in there. I'm not going to do it. The state legislature and I are going to pass the law saying your ruling does not stand. Defy the court.
Well, and I think because there's been no will to do that, the courts have taken more and more power.
And it's a natural inclination. They put on those robes, and all of a sudden, they rule our lives. I mean, what was my friend down there, Quirk, a law professor? He wrote about the book on judicial dictatorship. I mean, it was an excellent book, and he argued his whole life for the Stripper Amendment, as he called it. Article 3, Section 2, just restrict the review jurisdiction of the federal courts and the Supreme Court, which is right there. Congress has the power right there in Article 3.
Well, I think this was in order a couple of decades ago, at least, and I mean, I think
it began with Brown.
Yeah,
Brown was a very, very popular decision, but it began with Brown, which
that
overturned an 1896 decision.
Right, and that I think gave a lot of judges the understanding that if you get the accolades from the academy and from the media, then you're doing the right thing. And
then the court then proceeded. Look, they said. The Establishment Clause says that, we have to purge all replicas, prayers, any kinds of even pledges of allegiance and things like that from the educational system of the country. And they asserted this authority. Then they said, look, all state legislatures have to be on population alone. And so they kept making all these decisions to remake America, and the court and the Congress of the United States simply accepted it. As did presidents. Excuse me, I heard Nixon say on some of these busing decisions, I just said, look, don't cut off the funds. Send the funds to the school districts. And President Nixon said, as I point out in this book, we can't defy the court. We can't defy the court.
Again, like it's an imperial judiciary. So is there anything the court can do? I mean, I think we saw...
Well, you have to defy it. It'll keep doing it until it's slapped down. Look at FDR had the same problem. Excuse me. But he had the problem they were declaring his New Deal ideas unconstitutional, so he decided he's going to pack it. And the court had great prestige then. He's going to add one justice for every justice on the Supreme Court, I think, who was over 70.
Right.
And he was going to add up to 6 justices. And he did it in 1937. And it was a huge firestorm that broke his coalition. And he lost, I think, 72 seats in the House and 38. So it didn't work there, and presidents have forever been apprehensive about defying the court because they're not sure they'll win in the court of public opinion.
I think a lot of this goes back to something that I know, Pat, you've written about so eloquently over the years, which is this belief that, and I know we're jumping from the law for a moment, but in multiculturalism, that all ways of thinking are equally as good, that all cultures, and I'm talking about our our belief in the rule of law, and
Sure.
obviously coming from British common law and so forth. I want to play a soundbite again from this 96 Bork interview. Let's listen.
Multiculturalism is the theory that all cultures are equal. And of course, there is in the schools, there's been an effort to prevent people from assimilating to the dominant American culture and to retain separate cultures, Hispanic or whatever, or black and so forth. It is not true that all cultures are equal. They may be entitled to respect, but when we're talking about preparation for success in a complicated society like ours, all cultures are not equal.
And yet, that's what it's beaten into kids' head today. No, the way you're thinking about a representative democracy, no. You have to it has to be outcome-based judging. You have to get to the outcome, regardless of how you have to get to that outcome. It's outcome-based judging. And that's what other countries do. And that's what we have to do.
Well, what Bork says is correct, but all cultures are simply not equal in the United States of the West. Ours is, of course, rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition. It goes back to the 2,000 years at least. It produced Western Europe. It produced the United States of America. It was basically provided the basis of morality and law and all the rest of it. They weren't all equal. And the idea that they are, and Bork is exactly right, there's an idea of equality which is simply, you can say people have certain rights that cannot be taken away from them because of their religion. But the idea that all are equal is an absurdity.
And egalitarianism.
Frankly, if you're a Christian, you believe that Christ was the Son of God. No other religion claims that.
Pat, the Gorsuch comments to a Democrat Senator, Dick Blumenthal, and also apparently to Ben Sasse, calling Trump's comments disheartening and disillusioning, demoralizing, whatever. We can quibble with whether he said it about Trump. It seems to me he said it about Trump's comments. Come on.
I think Gorsuch's comments were disheartening and dismaying, I'll say. Why did he do that? What Trump said was, look, he got a so-called judge. So what?
Big deal.
I think that Gorsuch should not have taken that shot at the man who appointed him or went on the line for him. And frankly, it suggests an effort by Judge Gorsuch to get along with the people that hold his fate in his hand.
It concerns me greatly because there's another person that we know that likes to get along, and his name is Anthony M. Kennedy.
Exactly. They want to be popular. They want to be popular. I think, with due respect to John Roberts, John Roberts on that decision on Obamacare did not want to be really one of the front four in the Scalia court. He wanted it to be the Roberts court. And so that's why he took that independent stand in his mind. Well, I think that's one of the motives.
I think that whoever gave the green light to Gorsuch in that White House counsel's office to go ahead and put daylight between him and Trump, that person shouldn't be working.
Do you think someone did that?
Yes.
100%. Oh, my goodness.
Yep. Said it was okay to do that because it'll make you look independent, Pat. Because it would make him look independent, in other words. Okay, you want to do, yeah, we get it. That'll actually be good. Just stupid strategy.
You're letting the guy score off your own president?
Dumb.
To show his independence?
Dumb. It's dumber than dirt. I don't even, look, I'm not in there. I know it's easier when you're on the outside, but it's just that, I talked to a couple appellate court judges about this over the last 3 or 4 days. They were like, that's one of the most horrifying things. I can't even imagine saying something. The question's asked, well, what do you think about Trump? You say, I don't think it's appropriate for me to discuss what the chief executive says on political matters.
I'm a man of strong opinions, and I'm delighted he appointed me.
Exactly.
What are your questions about the law, etc.?
Well, another friend of mine said, he emailed me and said, I'd pull the nomination, put Pryor in there. Let's just pull the nomination. We're done.
I hate to say it. That was exactly my thought last night. I would said, Gorsuch out, bring Pryor in from the bullpen.
Let's go. Now we're cooking with gas. Now we're going to get the real jurist in there. This was just a warm-up act. Oh, my God. That's why I'm not in there. No, but Pat, we loved your piece. It is so important for people to understand it's time to hold the courts accountable, and that means you can circumscribe their jurisdiction. Pat, you're just brilliant. We love you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. You take it easy.
All right, you too.
Be sure to don't shop at Nordstrom.
We didn't get into that either. Oh, my God. All right, Pat, we appreciate it. I'm not a big Nordstrom's fan anyway. Trump's playing golf with the Mexican leader over the weekend at Mar-a-Lago. Be wary of the Japanese Jared Kushner is the shadow diplomat on all the U.S.-Mexico talks. Very interesting. We got a lot to get to on the Laura Ingraham Show. We will get to all of it together. The immigration sob stories. I was so far ahead of the curve of this issue. Guess what? They're coming. Every deportation will be followed by a sob story. How will Trump produce against that?
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Your black is beautiful. Beautiful, my boy. Baby, your black is beautiful. Baby, more, and your black is beautiful.
I'm going to read from folks who wanted to share their opinions about my endorsing Jeff Sessions. You are a disgrace to the black race. Anthony Burnham says, you are an Uncle Tom Scott. You're for Sessions. How does a black man turn on his own? Anthony B. from at Political Art says, Senator Tim Scott is not an Uncle Tom. He doesn't have a shred of honor. He's a house Negro. Black man who's a racist against black people. Big Uncle Tom piece of fertilizer.
Strong and can never fumble. She is courageous.
Those are very nice emails and tweets they got, right?
What I'm surprised by, just a smidgen, is that the liberal left that speaks and desires for all of us to be tolerant do not want to be tolerant of anyone that disagrees with where they are coming from.
That is Tim Scott, senator from the great state of South Carolina, who does not count as authentically black. For black liberals, Democrats, in fact, if you gave them a bunch of sodium pentothal, they would all agree with all those mean emails. You're a traitor to your race. You're an Uncle Tom, Uncle Scott, Tom Scott. I mean, this is what they think of black conservatives. Look at what they've said over the years about a Colonel Allen West or J.C. Watts or Walter Williams, Tom Sowell, and of course, going all the way back to Justice Thomas's confirmation hearings, when it wasn't about Anita Hill. It was about the fact that they had a guy come on the court replacing a liberal icon, Thurgood Marshall, who didn't think like he was supposedly, trained to think as reflexively left-wing.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. It is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Never have truer words been spoken. If you disagree with, in any way, the liberal progressive order, and you happen to be a minority, especially if you're black, you might as well, you might as well have leprosy. They don't want to touch you. You are unclean, and they will destroy you. They'll try to intimidate you, destroy you, marginalize you, demean you, denigrate. This is what they do. Because guess what? Tim Scott or Justice Thomas, they hold up a mirror to the truly intolerant among us, which are left-wing progressives, the most intolerant people on the face of the earth. They fear conservatives more than they fear ISIS. They fear independent thinkers more than they fear ISIS. Independent thinkers in their own party. Look at what they're doing to Joe Manchin. Have you seen the stuff they've been writing on social media about Joe Manchin? Oh my gosh, he voted for the Sessions confirmation, the only Democrat to do so. Senator Manchin from West Virginia. And so they've been, oh my gosh, that Sally Cohn, the gal who goes on from, I think she's CNN, she just appears on CNN. She said, I have half a mind to pile my family in my car and move to West Virginia and work to defeat Joe Manchin in his next election. Oh, go ahead, Sally. Move to West Virginia. I mean, that's fine. I don't think Joe Manchin's really worried about that. But you see what I'm saying? You cannot break the order on the left. That's why any Democrat who's pro-life is so dangerous, as Democrats used to be. That's why they're not allowed to speak at Democrat events. They're not welcome to Democrat events. They're not welcomed at the left-wing marches because they deign to think for themselves. Remember what Jennifer Holliday said after she decided she wasn't going to perform at the inauguration, after initially saying she would. She performed at Bush's, she performed at Obama's, and she was going to perform because she's an American. In what they said about her and what they did to her.
I did think about the African American community, even though Black Twitter really hurt me a lot in the sense of not even giving me a chance, calling me coon, calling me house nigga, calling me angel mama, calling me all kind of names and asking me to kill myself from the Black community. So that was hurtful.
Where will she go to get validation for, her view that as Americans we should support the president and hope he does well, and we can disagree with him and sometimes even vehemently, but for ceremonial purposes, the idea that it's some bad thing for a Black person to perform, it's just, that's why so many people, including Tom Sowell and Walter Williams at different points in time, have written about what it's like to be on the Black plantation, Black conservative authors, one after the other. It's time to break free from the plantation mentality that too many of our fellow, Black Americans have when it comes to their allegiance to the Democrat Party. You're free. You can go to any party you want. You can decide the Democrats are great or the Republicans are great, or vote for this Republican in one election, turn around and vote for a Democrat in the next. You're free to think for yourself. But they will make you pay for it. 855-40-LAURA. We have a lot of African Americans listening to this show coast to coast. We've heard your stories before about what it's like in the workplace to be a Black conservative, especially if you work with other Blacks and other liberals who don't like you. We've heard from Latinos who believe that illegal immigration has got to stop and are against amnesty. We've heard from new immigrants from all over the world who people immediately just think, well, you must be for the Democrats because the Republicans are anti-immigrant. And you say, no. I believe in doing it the right way. So they try to destroy you in their own little way, diminish you, demean you, denigrate you for thinking for yourself. And by the way, they do that to some extent to women. Female conservatives have always been, I don't whine about it because, ask me if I care. It doesn't bother me at all. But I think for some women, it is a little bit more difficult to be a hard-charging conservative because they think, well, what are they going to say about me? That I support Trump, and that look, all of these people said Trump's anti-women, so you must be, you must be a female misogynist. How can you support Donald Trump? And how many times did we hear that on social media or on cable news? By the way, Kelly Ayotte, I understand, is walking Gorsuch around the Senate. Who chose that shepherd to take him through? Oh, my goodness. I'd actually rather have an actual shepherd do it. Scott in Georgia is bringing this point up. Scott, go ahead. Does she have a staff?
Hi, Laura. I got one main point and two other statements.
Yeah.
I was calling in regards to Kelly Ayotte. If she's in the room with Gorsuch and Blumenthal, it's essentially two Democrats along with the new Supreme Court nominee. And I just, when I heard that this morning watching the news getting ready for work, I was like, who in the heck decided that? Why don't we just get the leader of the pack, McCain, to do it? Because he'll definitely sabotage.
They should have Bill Kristol take her around. Like one of these real never-Trumpers. It's a craziness. Anyone who advised Neil Gorsuch to put daylight between himself and Trump should be fired from the White House. Whoever advised him, whether it was in the White House council or somewhere, should be gone. Because you just don't know strategy. You might be a nice person. You might even be on Trump's ideological plane. But if you actually thought this was a good idea, you need to go into a different line of work because you don't know strategy at all. Neil Gorsuch should have said the following. I don't comment on political issues because I might, if I'm confirmed, I might have to hear this Ninth Circuit appeal. I might have to hear this case. And I don't want to be in a position where people are questioning my objectivity. So I think it's not appropriate for a judge to comment on what the political classes are saying. So that would have shut that down real fast. And also it looks independent. Looks like he's being an independent guy who believes in the separation of powers. Because nobody's perfect. The executive branch isn't perfect. They screw up. The courts can screw up, and God knows Congress screws up. Nobody's perfect, so we have checks and balances. People get, they get hot under the collar. They say things. Maybe they'll even tweet things. But we have three branches of government, and I'm not going to, as a judge, I might sit in judgment of this case, and I'm not going to comment on things that are said about the case or the dispensation of the case. I think there could be grounds for recusing him from this future consideration if he's going around to senators and saying he has a problem with this. 855-40-LAURA. He's not commenting on the underlying merits of the case, but you can see it just has the appearance of commenting on it. It's not good. So I don't know what kids are telling him, yeah, you go out there and you put daylight between you and Trump, and that's going to be a good strategy. Oh, God, help us. Let's go to Jim on line 3 in my home state of Connecticut. And Jim is doing some math about illegal immigration in my home state of Connecticut. I don't know where you're getting the numbers, Jim, but go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, Laura. Love the show. You're a great person.
Thank you.
I took, they're bragging that we've got 128,000 in the sanctuary cities here in Connecticut. So I'm trying to do the math on this, and it went past the capacity of my calculator. And what I'm looking at is if it's $1 each, it's 128,000. If it's $10, it's $1,280,000. If it's 100, I'm coming up with 12,800,000. 1,000 would be 128 million, and it looks like at 10,000 it would be $1,280,000,000, and that's what they say our deficit is going to be, is 1.3 billion. I mean, is this amazing or what?
Well, it's a huge drain on the public budgets across this country. It's a huge drain on the schools. I can't tell you how many people, when I travel, come up to me whose kids go to public schools, and the stories that I hear about the disorder in the classroom, because of all the languages being spoken in the classroom. It's in places where you didn't think this would happen. Now, I'm not talking about San Bernardino, California. I'm talking about Oklahoma City. I'm talking about Omaha, North Dakota. Yeah. Well, what does that cost? Can you really put a dollar amount on what an overcrowded classroom costs a child? Or what a teacher pulled in 4 or 5 different directions because of language and cultural barriers? Can you put a dollar amount on that? I think that's pretty hard to do. Let's go Craig in Georgia, line 4. Craig.
Hey, look, Laura, good to talk with you. And the reason I'm calling is the fact that we've been talking. Well, they're really the demo-Nazis and the Hollywood hypocrites. And the problem you have is you can't even have a dialogue with these people, because that's what the word dialogue means. It means to talk through an issue. And since they can't defeat us by their logic of their arguments, what they have to do is they have to demonize us to try to destroy us or defeat us.
Well, that's what they do. That's Alinsky 101. You isolate, you demonize, you destroy. So it's important that Republicans are all on the same page and do not give them the bat with which to hit us over the head. You don't send out tweets that merely confuse an issue. You don't get involved in these minutia moments where by the end of the day, people are like, well, what were they doing today again? What was the overriding narrative of the day? You can't get sucked into these side battles of personality and media. This person's on TV saying this and this. No. One message, one focus, one team. And all the other Republicans like McCain, and they want to go off and badmouth the administration, they're going to do that. I just ignore them. They have no power. You have the power. Now it's time to use it smartly. Don't squander it. You don't have much time. 855-40-LAURA. I've seen it. Some tweets out there. How long before Trump pulls the Gorsuch nomination? I think that would be a nuclear move. I don't think he's going to do that at all. But well, if there hadn't been the things happening before last night, I would say I would say you could make the case for pulling the nomination. And I'll tell you why when we come back. 855-40-LAURA. I'm not saying I would, but you could make the case for doing it if other things that hadn't complicated matters hadn't happened before as a precursor to all this. Remember, this appointment is for life. It's about judgment. And he needs to get one issue right, at least one major issue right. You don't want a justice who's worried about what the New York Times or Richard Blumenthal thinks of him. Don't go away.
I'll point out, listen, the Democrats are the party of the Ku Klux Klan. You look at the most racist, you look at the people, the Dixiecrats. They were Democrats who imposed segregation, imposed Jim Crow laws, who founded the Klan.
Push down so hard you can hear him start to sink.
Ted Cruz hit him across the face yesterday. It's good to lob that grenade over to the Democrats. I was in the midst of all this other stuff that they were trying to do to Jeff Sessions and Elizabeth Warren. How dare you tell me I can't speak? You're not going to shut Elizabeth down again? I love how all the senators, Raymond Arroyo is with us, all the senators got up and started reading the Coretta Scott King and Kennedy letters on the floor yesterday, like saying, make me stop.
It wasn't about those letters. It was about disparaging a senator, which is against the Senate rules. But again, this all gets massaged and distorted in the media lens and the media reporting. It wasn't anybody trying to stop Coretta Scott King's words from being
then they found
proclaimed.
Then they found a video clip of Coretta Scott King thanking Jeff Sessions. They put that out yesterday. It's like, whoops, that didn't make much sense. The NAACP gave racist Jeff Sessions the Governmental Award of Excellence in 2009. Ruh-roh. Yeah, they don't even know it. So the left is just falling all over themselves as well. All right, back to Gorsuch. Okay, you could envision a scenario, and I'm not saying I would approve of this scenario, but you could envision a scenario where, given how important this seat is on the Supreme Court, lifetime appointment with all the horrific decisions that have been handed down, going back to Roe all the way up to the Obamacare decision, that after we learn that he goes behind closed doors with Kelly Ayotte and starts to smash Trump, saying it's demoralizing and disheartening that Donald Trump would talk about the judiciary this way. And then he got very impassioned, said Senator Sass, when he was defending the brothers and sisters of the robe. And that judgment just makes me worry that he is going to fret about what the New York Times is going to write in an editorial if he's part of a block of justices that votes to overturn Roe versus Wade. Is he too worried about what the elites think of him? See, because my type of justice would be the type of nominee who goes in there and says, I'm not talking about politics, Senator. That's not my role. My role is circumscribed by the framers. The president is well within his right to criticize an overly politicized judiciary, but I have a job to do. That's what I would have said. So could you pull the nomination? Probably not wise to do so, but you could make an argument.
Hi guys, it's Jack Vanek from the Lady Gang. If you like mimosas and having a bunch of girl talk, why are you not listening to the Lady Gang? We are your one-stop shop for all your lady talk. New episodes are out every Tuesday on iTunes or podcastone.com.
The run for the roses so red.
Valentine's Day is all about capturing that wow factor that leaves a lasting impression. And my friends and my family, they still talk about the gorgeous 1-800-Flowers.com bouquets that I surprised them with last year, and I can't wait to hear from them this year. But 1-800-Flowers has the best deals on all the Valentine's essentials. Check it out. Right now you can order 18 enchanted roses for only $29.99. That's 18 of the enchanted roses for $29.99. That's a 45% discount off the normal price. So you just pick the delivery date and let 1-800-Flowers do the rest. And it's a beautiful mix of red, petal pink, and hot pink roses. And it's guaranteed to wow that special someone on Valentine's. And you're going to love it. 1-800-Flowers. Have the flowers picked right at their peak, and then they're shipped overnight to ensure the freshness that you love and that I demand. And again, 18 enchanted roses, $29.99, but hurry, it expires Friday. All right, Friday, and then it's over. Every bouquet is backed by the 100% smile guaranteed at 1-800-Flowers. Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click on that radio mic in the upper right-hand corner, enter my name, Laura. That's 1-800-Flowers.com, 18 enchanted roses for just $29.99. 1-800-Flowers.com.
Courts seem to be so political, and it would be so great for our justice system if they would be able to read a statement and do what's right.
The historical precedents are chilling. I will say some of the most dangerous autocrats of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Their two goals were to first undermine an independent judiciary, and second, to undermine a free press. This crosses a bright, bright line.
Yeah, we're basically one step away from Mussolini. Joe Scarborough needs to...
Joe Scarborough needs a history book.
American
presidents in the 20th century.
FDR, Andrew Jackson, Barack Obama has criticized
Lincoln.
The judiciary.
Not only criticized, they've tried to manipulate, stack the courts, do whatever they needed to ignore the order. I mean, this is the oldest trope for a president ever since Jefferson. You know, back in what is it, Marbury versus Madison?
Oh, yeah, make us.
He said, okay, you've got your order. Who's going to enforce it?
Yeah, enforce the order. Go ahead.
Try a different roll ball, and that'll be your activity today. Goodbye.
Yeah, first of all, there again, we always talk about the arguments you could make. You could make an argument that when one district court judge in Seattle comes down and says, no, the immigration order that the president signed is now invalid, at least temporarily, for the whole country. One judge in Seattle comes down and rules that last week. You could make an argument with historical precedent that the president could have been well within his right to say, we understand a district court judge in Seattle, Washington, has a view on what executive authority is, but I am ordering Homeland Security and government officials to abide by my executive order. It's a constitutional crisis. Well, if the judiciary itself becomes tyrannical and works against our Constitution or the will of the people, there has to be a check and balance. Other presidents understood that. And I'm not saying that Trump should go nuclear on the courts. I'm not saying that. But with historical precedent that's very solid, you could make the argument that the president could be within his right to say, that will not stand.
Couldn't they redraft? I mean, we were talking about this yesterday.
Yes.
Couldn't they repeal and replace the executive order?
That's what I've been arguing.
So that you curtail it to answer the pleas and the cries of the judiciary and the concerns people have that it's overly broad, and yet achieve the same end, where the vetting is in place, the refugees are frozen for the moment while you reanalyze the situation and figure out a common sense way forward.
I think what has to happen is that the White House itself has to have a message of the day. The message of the day should be unified. Every team member should be reiterating it time and again, no matter, and you don't have to go on every television show to talk about this. But if the message of the day is, we understand there's a court ruling here, and, you know, we respect the judiciary, but we also know the American people are in agreement that sometimes judges get too political, and we hope that this court process works out the way it should under our Constitution. But we have laws to enforce, and we have the people to protect. And that should just be amplified throughout the day. And we can cite historical precedent, but don't make it a war with one particular judge. Make it a war to educate the public. and to send out a positive message of why it's important for the executive to have this authority. And that way, you don't get kind of sidetracked on these other issues. But my goodness, Rich Lowry's piece today about the overly sanctified, and I would say sanctimonious judiciary in this country. Can you imagine? And we'll bring in Dave Bratt here, congressman from the great state Commonwealth of Virginia, 7th Congressional District. Who knows what I'm talking about here? But Congressman Bratt, it's great to talk to you, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Laura, always great to be on.
So we're talking about this huffing and puffing that people like Joe Scarborough and a lot of never-Trumpers are engaged in with, how could the president ever criticize the judiciary? This is just terrible. And, of course, there are plenty of examples of a chief executive being very unhappy with the judiciary over the years, including some of the nasty references by Barack Obama over the last 8 years when things didn't go his way. But, what are your thoughts on how this is playing out right now?
Well, I think you just hit it just right. We need a message of the day, not only from our president, and he's doing pretty well at it. I mean, he's out there doing it, and the press secretary, but also from our leaders, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan. They need to all weigh in every day on these key pieces that are going on. After the inauguration, the next day, we had that huge march by the progressive left, and just terrible language on placards, and they're ruling the day. They're stealing all the press. And then the left blogs come out and push their message. And then the mainstream media picks up the leftist blogs and just the horrific language from these activists. And it's fake news. And then our side doesn't push back. Republicans are kind of used to playing by the, rules and following the rule of law and that
punching
kind of
bags.
But, right, we're punching bags. And so we need to get aggressive. And we just won. So it's not theory time. It's time to take action. And the ultimate irony is the left is blocking people like Jeff Sessions, who just got in yesterday, a true hero. And once our secretaries get put into place, then we're going to do much better, right? It's very hard to make progress when you can't get your secretaries and your quarterbacks in line to execute policy.
Congressman Bratt, there is concern, and I share this concern, that major pieces of legislation are being slow-walked on Capitol Hill. There's a sense that I would say the sense of urgency is waning about getting certain things done, such as Obamacare, repeal and replace, really important tax reform, even if it's not as comprehensive as some people want, the major pieces of tax reform getting done. On a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you that some of these important pieces of legislation are being slowed down?
Yeah, I'm at a 7 or 8. I mean, just every Hill rag today, right? I mean, the Politico, the Hill, roll call, et cetera, the senators have grave concerns about making sure we have the product exactly right before we repeal Obamacare. And then a week ago, there was a bunch of stuff on repairing Obamacare instead of repeal and replace, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And it's up there at a 7 or 8. And then what folks out there may not understand is all this has to happen within reconciliation and this 2017 budget. And then in 4 more months, we're going to do another budget and reconciliation, which allows us to do corporate tax reform and get some economic growth. And I talked to Larry Lindsey, the Harvard guy who did Reagan's tax plan. He's expecting 4% growth and 8% wage growth for the average person. The first time in 30 years, the average person will see their wages go up by 8%.
Huge.
But we can't do that tax piece unless we do the health care piece first. And so you're right, the alarm bell should be ringing, right? And Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell should be out there every day. This has to be done. Healthcare has to be done in 2 months. Done.
Date
right?
certain.
February, March, done.
Date certain. Has to be done.
Certain. What is it? Every Republican should know this. They should know that if anybody's pushing back and trying to slow walk this stuff, they're against getting rid of Obamacare, and then we own it. And right, it is imploding. And so reformers like Scott Walker in Wisconsin, et cetera, who have done serious reform, they say, once you start reforming, you don't get to do it halfway. You finish it, and then we got to get back to private sector health care where you get to meet your doctor and you spend dollars out of your wallet or out of your HSA, and you're going to be more careful, and that will drive down health care costs. And we'll have our people be very happy with what they're about to see happen.
Now, when you look at the left, they are usually reading from the same hymn sheet. You know, they're usually on the same page when it comes to messaging. Or they'll appoint someone to be the lead messenger. So it was Elizabeth Warren was going to say all the racially charged things about, or at least most of them about Sessions, and she would carry the football for the day, and then they'll move on to someone else. But it seems like we have lots of people off the reservation. This is not a new thing for the Republican Party. But yesterday we had John McCain criticizing the Yemen raid, basically saying it was unsuccessful, which then led to a back and forth with Sean Spicer about the Yemen raid. And of course, John McCain is endearing himself to the New York Times, endearing himself to liberal editorial writers who can't stand Trump, but nevertheless kind of mucking up the narrative for the Trump administration on something that, you know, it seems like, yeah, it was dangerous, but it seems like they got an enormous amount of information in that raid, and they killed 14 top Al-Qaeda operatives. But so what's McCain doing? What role is he playing?
Well, I think Trump has it right on McCain and Lindsey Graham and some of the other slow walkers. Talk, no action, right? So you've had 8 years. You're in powerful positions. You're chairman of key committees. And what happened to foreign policy over the last 8 years? Disaster, right? And so they've just been giving Trump a hard time on the Russia policy, China, Taiwan, one China, everything, right? Just and it's a little curious, right, that the most poison, it's in-house toxic, language, it's always by people who competed against him or ran for president in the past. So there's ego involved, and Trump is just a key figure at this time, and he's going to force us, right? That the good news is that when you're talking about slow walking, et cetera, as soon as Price gets in with this Friday morning, right, then Trump said, I'm going to start tweeting on health care, and I think he'll get his motivational skills are very good. And once he lights a little fire under Congress and the Senate, I think we're going to get moving. And he's going to show you who the slow walkers are.
Good. Well, I think that's critical. That's critical. If Mitch McConnell is a wily old dog, okay, he's a wily guy. And if he doesn't want Obamacare to be decided this year and to be reformed and repealed and replaced, it won't happen. So it's incumbent upon Trump's team to get up there on Capitol Hill and say, this is what I campaigned on, this is what you're doing, and you offer your input and you give us your piece of legislation, would love to work with you on it, but this is happening. This can't be pussyfooting around Mitch McConnell because he's been the old lion of the Senate for so long. This is a mandate from the American people, and I want it done. I hope Trump's team is doing that. I have confidence that they will do that, and I hope they are.
Oh, I think they will. And people need to realize it's not just health care, right? Health care costs are the main drivers of Medicare, Social Security, veterans programs, Medicaid, everything. They're all bankrupt. And your kids will not get any of those programs. They're all insolvent, Medicare, Social Security in 2034. And in 50 years, your kids won't get anything. Mm-hmm. And so this isn't some theoretical little experiment. This is the lives of your kids are at stake. And it's going to bankrupt the country if we don't solve this health care thing.
Are the
cost curve down?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's so much I want to get to. Are the left-wing progressive trolls following you around like they're following around people like Louis Gohmert and others in their districts? I mean, I've been reading stuff about people doing tele-town halls because if they have actual town halls, they're worried about violence breaking out and these black mass people showing up and so forth. What's happening on your front?
No, it's going on across the country, and of course the mainstream media won't cover any of it because violence isn't good. When your side of the aisle, right, when we had the grassroots Tea Party movement 6 years ago, they'd go to a park and it'd be cleaner after they left. No toxic signs. You look at the Women's March the day after, Madonna's going to blow up the White House, Judd is swearing her head off. I mean, it's just grotesque. So the left covers themselves. But yeah, I had a teletown hall, Facebook town hall. I got 30,000 hits in an hour, and over the course of that day, 30,000 negative hits, right? So that's not my Democrat friends in the community, right? When you get 30,000 hits,
no, those are bots
in an hour or so, right? And so and then if you tell the truth, right? Everybody should go out and Google, right? It's called Soros is funding all this stuff. It's called Indivisible, and then the second thing is called Resistance. Right, and the press doesn't know this. So I'm out with 20 press people in the hall after votes yesterday, I tell the press, hey, why don't you win a Pulitzer, right? You guys are supposed to be investigative journalists. Why don't you go look up resistance and
Indivisible.
Indivisible, and you'll win a Pulitzer because it's the number one story in the country right now. People are raiding Congressman's office. McClintock got dragged out of a town hall by the cops to keep him safe. It's just unbelievable. It's just toxic negativity. And the difference is, right, the press is saying this is the Democrats' Tea Party movement. It is not. The Tea Party was about taxed enough already, following the Constitution.
Obamacare repeal.
In the country. Obamacare repeal, exactly. Right, and what is left? Not one idea. And that's why they're embarrassed. They can't name one thing, one policy they want to put in place of Obamacare. It's crashing. They have nothing. They got nothing.
Dave,
how do you generate jobs?
Dave,
nothing.
You're awesome. You're just one of my favorites. You should run for Senate in Virginia. Come on. I'm gonna work on you.
We're voting for you.
I'm working on you. I'm gonna work on you to run for Senate. Oh my God, he's fantastic. And the bots are out. Yeah, the left-wing bots are out. The resistance movement. Right. They have no ideas. Dave Bratt, thank you so much for joining us. People of Virginia should be very proud of you. We're going to take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. Don't go away. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. We have a lot up on LifeZet. Bill targeting legal immigration could save us $1.7 trillion. And guess what? A new poll says Americans prefer lower costs of health care to the Obamacare provisions. All good ammo for this administration.